Are African cultures sufficiently exported outside the continent? How can the influence be ensured? So many questions that we're trying to answer this morning in the Grand Angle with our guest, Alimata Salambéré, former Minister of Culture in Burkina Faso. She's also a founding member of the Pan-African Film Festival, FESPACO. She is now the director of the NGO SOCA, which fights to preserve African culture and promote it in the rest of the world. Alimata Salambéré, hello. During your career, you have fought for the influence of African culture. 50 years after the creation of this event, considered the great mass of the 7th African art, would you say that Africa knows better to promote its arts and culture? In my opinion, for those who are under 60 years, as you know, the FESPACO is about 50. Those who are younger than that feel the need to assert themselves and claim their full African identity. And this is reflected in the various events that we see in the fields of the arts, culture, entertainment happening everywhere on the continent. Not to mention the particular case of African music that is exported in the whole world. So to summarize, I will say that today, Africa markets itself well on the cultural front.
De la musique africaine qui inonde le monde entier. Donc, pour me résumer, je dirais que l'Afrique se vend donc très bien aujourd'hui, culturellement et artistiquement.
And with the exception of a few African films, most productions by African filmmakers are only watched by African people on the continent and elsewhere, and most especially, or probably maybe because most of the themes surrounding these films are mostly Afrocentric. But why is this?
I will say that it is a mix of all those factors and challenges. Admittedly, the essential themes of most African films are of little interest to viewers in other continents. It must be noted that the movies of our filmmakers are made with very little financial and material resources. For example, they usually hire non-professional actors, and then there's very little funding in Africa. There are some exceptions in Burkina Faso and in Senegal, and of course the country that is in the lead is Nigeria, with its culture sector that represents the country's third source of income. Otherwise, you could have to rely on international organizations like the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie and the European Union.
Madame Salambéré, pour terminer, on va parler
Through SOCA, you strive to include the diaspora in your battle to promote African culture. You're particularly targeting the younger generations who sometimes know little. Why is this important that these kids don't forget their roots? And what projects are you currently working on?
En ce moment, justement, tend à appuyer ce rayonnement de la culture africaine.
La culture est le socle de l'identité.
Culture is the foundation of identity. In this world of migration and diversity, I believe it's become essential to know who we are and to know how to participate in this global exchange. Culture is a vehicle which young people will fly to Wakanda for those who have seen Black Panther. Now, SOCA has 2 permanent programs and 3 main projects. Grammar Answers You is a direct correspondence between a young person with questions and concerns about his or her culture. And then there is Chichita, which means to transmit in More, the main Burkinabe language, through which we will give the necessary tools to students around the world in order to make them ambassadors of African culture. Lastly, on the international level, we want to bring together countries of oral tradition.
Nous comptons réunir, par exemple, les pays traditions orales. Ces pays-là pourront
This is so that they reflect on the conservation of these cultures. And then we also have a plan on setting up African institutes around the world. If there are African institutes in different parts of the world, it will help rely our knowledge and conserve our history.